I want to read a poem. It has to do with sphagnum bogs. Ever been on a quaking bog? Anybody here ever been on a quaking bog?
I don't know what that is.
Ah, okay. What it is it's a bog where the sphagnum moss covers water over thousands of years, and then it gets thick enough that it covers all the water and you can walk on it. And when you walk on it, it's like a waterbed.
In Vermont, there's a thing called the floating island, which is a piece of bog that broke off and has just stayed in this one spot, just floating there.
Wow, wow.
So,
Yeah, I love quaking bogs. Yeah, that's a isolated quaking bog or
Yeah.
floating. Yeah, and they're wonderful places to go to. Except you got to be careful because if you break through, that's it. And I don't know if you ever heard of bog people, like in Northern Europe, they would find in these bogs, eventually they get all filled in and they cut the bogs for peat and all that, but they would find humans there and mastodons. And you don't deteriorate very much because it's very acidic. So I want to read a poem. I've got this poem. It's a repetition. Each line starts with the word because, okay? So it's a repetitive poem about bogs. And then I want to tell you a story after that. Did you say body and soul?
Yep.
That's not a bad choice.
We're having some resonance
Body and wait till you hear the story. Why he is drawn to sphagnum bogs. Because they're soft. Because they don't have a solid base. Because pitcher plants grow in them. Because they're found in northern climes. Because few people venture into them. Because they tend to not get developed. Because of the animals he might see. Because they're nice places to lie down on, if you don't mind a little wetness. Because they quake. Because they're ancient. Because they have holes that might be bottomless. Because they preserve death. Because there's part of him that hasn't been found yet. Because somehow his beginning was there, his ending too. I remember writing that poem. I was in the bathtub. And I was reading Alan Watts. I don't know if any of you remember Alan Watts at all. He introduced a lot of Zen Buddhism to America. And I don't remember what book I was reading, but there was a line I just read. It was like, it's not good to have too solid of a foundation. And the poem came. And I put the book down. I had my journal next to me while I was in the bathtub. And that poem came out just like I read it. Didn't change a word. But what's interesting, here I'm describing all these, the dampness, all that stuff. But the very ending of the poem, I don't know why that came, because somehow his beginning was there, his ending too. I don't know why that came. So here's the story. And body and soul might be okay to play behind this story.
Okay, I'll give it a shot.
I was up at Acadia National Park. Anyone ever go to Acadia? It's my spiritual home. I've been going there since the old hitchhiking days, Showed up there in '71, and 2 of my kids have been born there. I've lived there 7 years, and it's my spiritual home. And there's a place called Big Heath in the park. They don't tell you about it. It's on the map. And I said, well, it must be a big bog. And it is. And I love going there. And I love going there alone. Just like with nobody else, just alone. You go, I've taken people there, but when you talk, you profane the place, if you know what I mean. It's like, you shouldn't be talking when you're there. So this one time I was there alone. And in this bog, there's a little bit of open water. And where the open water is, that means the mat's there. And you gotta be really careful. So So I went slowly walking toward the water. I was maybe from here to you, away from the edge of it. And I saw this little flower, about this tall, that I'd never seen before. So I stooped down, I looked at it very closely. It was a kind of orchid, but I wasn't familiar with it. So I had my notebook out and I tried drawing it, which was hilarious because I can't draw. But then I started describing it with words, a little better at that. And for some reason, as I was finishing writing, I turned away from the open water and I started stepping. Whoa! Right through my knees, and I'm sinking, and I'm going down. The very first thing I did, I yelled out as loud as I could, "You fool!" And I struggled and got up and broke through again, and then I got up onto solid bog. Took the 10 deep breaths, and it's like, oh, that was so stupid. And once I calmed down, I thought of that poem that I'd written a few years earlier. Because somehow its beginning was there, its ending too. And I thought, you better be careful about what you write. And that flower that almost led to my demise, well, it was me who would have led to it, not the flower, but it was Arethusa, or dragon's mouth, and it's a beautiful little orchid. And I've been to that bog many times. I was just there a month ago, and I always look where I'm stepping out.